She makes it very clear we are not to remain silent in this time. I've had people say to me, I know people in the high places of our church who see this as wrong, but they want to focus on the evangelism work. This is the evangelism work. Believe it or not, having a church that is faithful to God in all aspects is going to be the greatest witness in this world, because the glory of the Lord will be seen upon us. We won't be just speaking about the glory of the Lord. People will see the glory of the Lord in us, because it's no longer us, it's only Christ. And the only way we can get to that point is if we separate from the world, mentally, ideologically, and spiritually. If we remain silent after what is about to be shared today, my question to you after reading that, and I'm not going to answer it because I hope the Lord convicts you of what is the truth, are we enemies of Christ? So I'm going to just set the background. There are international Sunday conventions, and that have been in place actually for quite a long time. We know, obviously, in the late 1800s, there was an agitation for the Sunday law, which A.T. Jones and to a lesser extent E.J. Wagner and some others were involved in squashing. In the early 1900s, this organization, or this entity, the International Labour Organization, was formed. It was actually part of the League of Nations. So it was a special part of the League of Nations. But in the 1940s, when the United Nations was formed, it came out of the League of Nations and became the United Nations. This particular body was the only entity that came from the League of Nations and transferred into the United Nations. Every other thing just kind of went by the wayside, and the United Nations formed a whole bunch of other arms as a result. And in 1921, so this is before the United Nations was formed, but under the auspices of the International Labour Organization, there was a convention passed by this group, by this entity, called the Weekly Rest Convention. I'm just going to enlarge the text on there. In Article 2 of this convention, it says, the whole of the staff employed in any industrial undertaking, public or private, or any branch thereof, shall accept or otherwise provided for by the following articles, enjoy in every period of 7 days a period of rest comprising at least 24 consecutive hours. The period of rest shall, wherever possible, be granted simultaneously to the whole of the staff of each undertaking. It shall, wherever possible, be fixed so as to coincide with the days already established by the traditions or customs of the country or district. You can see where this is going, can't you? So this is the book, or it was a document that was put out by the International Labour Organization to the different nations prior to them actually voting this convention through. And at the very start of it, it tells you what they actually mean by this. So I've just highlighted the most relevant bit on the first page there. It says in Article 427 of the Treaty of Peace, blah, blah, blah. And this is what they mean by this international convention. The adoption of a weekly rest of at least 24 hours, which should include Sunday wherever practicable. So this is not just, them coming up with, let's have Monday, Tuesday, whichever day of the week free. No, they actually intended it. It was their intent was to make it Sunday. That's what their intent was.
You say the League of Nations, which we now know as the United Nations, had backed this up?
Yes. So this was in 1921.
It's still part of their organization until today?
Yes. So the International Labour Organization is still part of the UN now. So the League of Nations went away, but the United Nations is now in place instead of it. But the International Labour Organization is part of the United Nations.
It's interesting how labor is oftentimes connected to some of this stuff. Labor.
The international. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking like why labor, and the unions and with Project 2025, there was that labor call again. Anyway, it's just interesting that it's always couched somewhere. Even when Constantine passed his Sunday law, the labor was at the root of it all. It's interesting. Anyway, keep going.
Yes.
I'll let you go ahead.
Yes, it's very much about seeing. So just for good measure, this is in 1957, the same International Labour Organization passed another convention called the same thing and pretty much the same wording. So they talk about uninterrupted weekly rest for a period of 24 hours. They're granted simultaneously again. And then the day of week, the rest day should be on the day that's established by tradition or customs. And then if this is the one added little bit in there that wasn't in the one from 1921, if there's religious minorities, then we should, as far as possible, respect their religious practices. So that's as far as possible, though. There might be some possibilities that we can't respect things like, people's religious liberty around certain things, because it might be just best to keep it on a Sunday. So we've got to remember that that's whilst it's there. Now, it is reflected in the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So it's not just in the International Labour Organization, which is part of the UN. It's reflected right throughout the United Nations. So Sustainable Development Goal 8 is about decent work and economic growth, and 8.5 of that particular goal talks about decent work for all. And that sounds really vague and really nebulous, and like you kind of go, what do they mean by decent work for all? Does it just mean that they're not being treated like slaves? What does that mean? Well, they tell you what it means. You want to say something more,
No,
James?
I did not see that. But now that you made the labor connection, and the moment you read this, it clicked. Yeah, it's interesting. Go ahead.
So notice the similarity in terms. So this is a document from 2018 by, once again, the International Labour Organization, and this was their conference that they had in 2018, and this is the document that came from that, calling ensuring decent working time for the future. So this is 2018. And they once again refer to those two conventions that I just showed you, the one from 1921, which is Convention number 14, and the one from the 1950s, which is called Convention number 106. So they actually are referencing this when they're talking about what they go on to say. So it refers to the collective character of a weekly rest with a view to ensuring wherever possible that it is taken at the same time by all workers on the day established by tradition or custom. The social purpose of this principle is to enable workers to take part in community life and in special forms of recreation. I wonder what those special forms of recreation would be. Would it be church going? I don't know, maybe.
Oh, that's
Number
funny.
203. It says the principle of Sunday rest is not universal as it has been established by Christian tradition. And then 204, weekly rest is a social necessity and if taken simultaneously enables workers to enjoy their leisure hours together. So it does recognize that there are other places that don't currently keep Sunday, but notice how they're actually steering towards that whole idea that it's Sunday rest. They don't say Monday rest or Friday rest or Saturday rest. They actually specifically reference Sunday rest. And actually, if you do a search throughout this entire document, they mention Sunday 77 times.
Mercy.
This is not a coincidence. This is intentional, because right back when the very first convention was actually put in place, number 14, they actually were intending it to be about enforcing a Sunday rest from an international perspective, not just nationally. Now, we know, I mean, this is from 2021. There's been more countries that have started to shift their weekends. So UAE, which is a Muslim it's kind of not just really a country, it's kind of like a combination of countries. They've actually shifted their weekend from Friday, Saturday to Saturday, Sunday to be in line with international commerce. So this now becomes their new custom. So they can then also pass a Sunday law. So things are in place for them to do this. And of course, if you have a national, international emergency around climate, there is so many things out there now that are pointing to the fact that the best thing we can do for humanity and the world is to have a day of rest, on Sunday. It's the only thing that will save this planet. Well, one of the things. The other sustainable
Yeah.
development goals perhaps do too,
Mm.
according to them, not according to me. Now, the United Nations Charter is really, really important because this kind of sets the direction of pretty much everything that's within the United Nations. It has the underpinning principles, and it's all about saving the planet, saving the people, saving everyone from imminent demise because of particularly nuclear bombs. That was how it really started off, because it started the same year that the two nuclear bombs were dropped on Japan in 1945, and everyone, oh, it was the very first thing that they had to deal with as a international body was how do we put conventions in place to prevent nuclear annihilation. So it was all about saving the planet, and they talk about having unity, common interest, and working together for all peoples. So remember that we just read in those conventions that it was unified rest, where people were actually able to really experience the true rest that they need when everyone is simultaneously working together and then resting together. That's how we save the planet, according to them. Once again, it talks about combining our efforts. It talks about collective measures, and so I'm just looking at my screen behind, cooperation without distinction, common ends. So all of those things that I've just highlighted, harmonizing with my underlining. All of this language is around, we all need to just be in sync with one another, because that's the only way that we can save ourselves. You know, Christ doesn't save us, we save us, and we do it from this perspective. That's what the UN says. And then you have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the key document that every nation in the world bases their human rights statements on. And sorry, it's just going to go through. So it talks about the spirit of brotherhood, being unified together. And then the second last article says everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. So only when we are actually working in unison together, even with Sunday rest, can we really truly develop our personality and be free and that sort of thing. This is the mentality behind all of these statements. And so when you see it reoccurring in other, someone's just written common good. Yes, that's exactly what it's all about. It's just different language, but the same principle behind it. Solidarity, fraternity, all of these words all essentially are talking about the same thing. It's our only means of saving ourselves and saving the planet. And so that's why we need to have synchronized rest. So a summary of these rest conventions. It's about decent work conditions, which requires weekly rest time. It should be communal or simultaneous. Only way that we are truly free and everyone is truly free, where practicable, it should be on a Sunday, and it's in harmony with the UN Charter, the brotherhood that brings peace. And so this is really the basis of an international Sunday law, and it's been in place since 1921. None of us realized, well, I certainly didn't realize, maybe some other people who are listening realized all along, but it's new to me, and I'm sure it's new to some others. Okay, so in 2024, so just last year, I'm sure many of you have heard about this, the Pact for the Future, and I did speak about this previously in a previous talk, but I just want to re-emphasize it because this was all of the heads of the state around the world who came together at the United Nations to kind of reaffirm the principles behind the UN Charter. So protect the needs and interests of present and future generations through the actions of this Pact for the Future. And they talk about how through all the different innovations, they can accelerate the realization of the aspirations of the United Nations, because of course, got to make sure the aspirations of the United Nations are fulfilled. And it says, once again, we only realize that potential or this potential through international cooperation when we all work together. We will strengthen United Nations systems, they agreed to, and we'll strengthen our partnerships, including with faith-based organizations. So it's all about trying to bring the whole world together so we can save ourselves. And so that was what they were all agreeing to. And once again, they emphasized this point around Sustainable Development Goal 8, promote decent work. So they were once again making an indirect reference back to Convention number 14 and Convention, I think it's 106 or 107 from the 1950s around having that weekly rest. They were all agreeing to accelerate this in 2024. So if we see things rapidly going towards the Sunday law, this is why they've agreed to accelerate it.
Mm.
So every head of state signed up to it in 2024. It was about strengthening the position of the UN and accelerating its aspirations. It's about creating stronger partnerships, including with churches or faith-based organizations. And it was once again reiterating that simultaneous weekly rest. So we actually have, from 2024, the United Nations and all of the nations that agree to that have actually agreed to try and implement a Sunday law. It's not directly spoken, but if you trace it back to what the original convention was all about, which all of the conventions and all of the things have been since, it's about trying to achieve a Sunday rest. So if the international instruments were there in 1921, I can hear people asking us, what has the world been waiting for? Why haven't they implemented the Sunday law already? If that was there, what stopped them? What happened to the Blair Bill in the late 1800s? It disappeared. So why can't this one disappear? This is what I believe they've been waiting for. Members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church were the most significant instrumental force in preventing the Blair Bill from being passed, but we are no longer the most instrumental force in picking up on these things and actually pushing back against them. We have become silent. We have not actually sound the warning because we've become ignorant, because we've joined with these people, with these nations who are intent on destroying God's name and on destroying God's people and destroying his theology. That's why.
You know, that's a bombshell right there. I did a video recently where I was talking about how the Reformation, the Catholics are coming out saying, well, he was this Catholic man. His name is Stephen Michael something. He was on the Candace Owens show, and he publicly said that the Protestant Reformation is rooted in Satanism. He's a Catholic. You know, Catholics don't like Protestant reformers at all. And I kept on tracing where that mentality came from. They believe since 1960 something, they had signed a document saying that the protest is over. I'm pretty sure you heard about this whole thing. And I went to CatholicAnswers.com and I was reading an article based on Seventh-day Adventist. And there is where they said the only body left in Adventism in the Protestant world that are still standing are the Seventh-day Adventists. But inside of Seventh-day Adventism, the vast majority of them are pretty much no longer protesting. And one of the words that was used is, we have a few Philistines left that we gotta get rid of. The Goliath has been slain. It's like a Philistines. So the Goliath, in a sense, represents the reformers, the Reformation. So the Philistines is like they are the David who are getting rid of the Protestant Reformation, but it's saying among the Seventh-day Adventists, it's just a few Philistines left, which is going to get rid of them, and that will be the end of the story. So what you're saying is true. We were the only Protestant reformers left, at least in our principles and truth, but we are being watered down so bad. I've looked into it. It's actually very scary. Like the message you're preaching right now, most Adventist churches will not welcome you if you were to share this, but thank God for the internet. But I'm telling you, what you're sharing right now, it's not popular. And in most churches you go to,
No.
you will never hear it. You will never hear this subject.
We have, in today's world, we have this false idea of love that if we actually call something truth and that person over here doesn't espouse that truth, then we're being hateful. But if I'm telling someone they're about to step off a cliff and they probably should pull back, is it hateful to warn them that that's actually the cliff? Do we actually believe that this world is coming to an end and the Lord is bringing a judgment upon people who don't want to accept his truth? Because if we don't believe it, then by all means, go ahead and just snooze on. But if we actually believe that the world is coming to an end and only those who love Christ's truth will actually go through and be with him in heaven, then do not snooze on. We cannot do this. This is not being loving to actually not warn people. But you're right. I've had letters sent out by conference presidents to whole conferences about me because I'm particularly divisive, apparently, or divisive, however you want to say it. But the reality is the Lord's truth does cut, and it cuts both ways. For some, it is a healing balm because I suddenly realize this is true and you've just saved me from stepping off the cliff. The others will go, I want to step off the cliff. Stop bothering me, please. And it becomes like a thorn in the side as they're plummeting off that cliff. And I'm sure as they're looking at the ground coming towards them and the thorn in their side, it makes them doubly uncomfortable. But we need to realize that the most loving thing that we can do is actually to warn our brethren and to warn the world. This is a message that really actually needs to be taken to the world. And I believe that the Lord will open up opportunities to take this message to the world very soon in a way that is much more louder. And it'll probably come hand in hand with a whole bunch of persecution, much more than what we're experiencing now. But for some reason, and the Lord in his mercy has stayed back the winds, and he's allowing these messages to be heard in our church first out of such mercy. We've been ignorant and we need to stop this. We need to stop it. If one part of the body is hurting, whether it be in Africa, in Australia, in the US, we need to actually recognize that the hurt is because there's something erroneous amongst us and the Lord is not fully with us. And, some people didn't experience the persecution of job loss and all of that sort of thing with the whole, mandates over the last few years. And they sort of just go, oh, what's this? Stop talking about these kind of things. It's nonsense. Well, if you've experienced it, you will know that it wasn't nonsense. And what is coming upon us is even greater than what we've experienced over the last few years. And we need to recognize that if there is a warning now, then the warning is not to be taken in vain. We need to respond to it. And the Lord has been so gracious to share these warnings in scripture, in Ellen White's writings. And now we have evidence in secular writings that are becoming obvious to us now because of the internet that we didn't know about before. And so we need to listen. Stop turning our ears and eyes away because it's uncomfortable.
Amen. I just want to say thank you for this. I was talking to, I did a video recently where in that video there was a subject, it was a minister that was preaching in that in the sermon, she said something along the line that Bible prophecies are meant to be comforting letters. They are not to be used as a fear-mongering concepts. And the whole idea is if you preach prophecy and warn God's people of what's coming, you are creating fear. And wherever there is fear, it's not from God. And, we need to re-preach the prophecies correctly and comfort the people in God's love. I was like, I don't know, man. I think both can be done. There's times the messages of truth brings an element of fear, but the fear is not what saves you. The fear is meant to wake you up, man. If you know the house is on fire and somebody shout and let you know their house is on fire, you don't get mad at the individual. You say, well, thank the Lord that you woke me up. Let me get out of here so I don't get cooked up in the heat. So I think the idea is not, we don't live in the fear, but it's supposed to create a degree a wake up call so that we learn to embrace God's love a little bit more. Anyway, I was pushing back against that, not too hard, but I was like, I don't know. The prophecies are meant to challenge us and wake us up and give us a sense of urgency so that we can be enveloped in God's love and deepening our relationship with Him. And that's not a bad thing. But anyway, it's just that I know messages like this, people are gonna look at it like you're just trying to make people afraid and stuff. That's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. I
No,
respectfully disagree
no.
with that.
I do too. We're told that prophecy, we have a sure word of prophecy, and it's until the day star, which is in Revelation, we're told that the day star is Jesus Christ, until the day star arise in our hearts. What I'm actually sharing today is we only need Christ. Remove yourself from everything else because He's coming back. And if you want to take this world with you, He won't be taking it home to heaven. Heaven is not big enough for this world. It's only big enough for those who want to follow Christ.